Welcome to the 12th season of the Library Show. Can't believe it's been so long, but it's a great gig, and the libraries here in Lower Merion are just terrific. We look backwards at all the things that they've done, and we look forward. Today's show, to mark the beginning of the season, is all about looking forward. We're going to start with Adam Haigh. He's the technology librarian for the system, and he is invaluable, both for our librarians and for all the library patrons. And not incidentally to me when I have a technical question. Adam, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me, Lenore. I think it's been a little while since I've been in the show. I think the last time I was here, we were getting ready to roll out a new calendaring system,
Ah, yes.
and so that's been going really well for a while now. And so, uh, idle hands I have to keep my fingers in something. So we have a couple things I can share with your listeners as we go through the process. I guess first and foremost, we do have a new director whose name is Lynn Williamson, who's starting on Monday, September 12th, taking the place of David Belanger. She comes to us from the Free Library of Philadelphia, where she was the chief of the Neighborhood Library Services Division in
Hmm.
the library administration. She was with the Free Library for about more than 20 years. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to know her and meet with her and see what she has to do. But in preparation for her arrival, we're always looking at things. I guess the first thing I want to mention, this will be taking place sometime in September, early September. Uh, we are upgrading our computer reservation technology in libraries for public computer use. What library staff would, amongst ourselves, refer to as PC Res. Um, we are now going to a system called Cloud9, which is the same company, but the advantage to patrons, what they will notice is rather than navigating through what could be a slightly laborious software or clunky software package, all these things will be available through a web-based module. They'll just look like a website. So it's not completely clear what that's going to look like yet. We're still waiting to do some training, but that is rolling on or around September 6th. Um, but I think it will be easier for patrons to use. Uh,
And Adam, are you talking about patrons who are using the computers within the library, or somebody like me who is reserving a book from home on my computer?
no, this would be for people reserving a chance to work on the library computers.
Ah,
So right now, people would come in, a patron comes into Ludington Library and they say, I need to get on a computer. They're none available. So they would stop by a service desk. Ludington's most likely the reference desk on the ground floor. And they would say they need to make a reservation. And they have two choices. They can either interact with a member of the Ludington staff at the desk, or they could walk over to one of the public PCs that just handles reservations. Um, and that's great and that's useful. But I think a web-based module is, I think, where most people are more comfortable on a website than they are on a software package. I think especially if it happens to be the first time you're in a library, I think it's going to be easier to do that from basically a website, a fancy website. Um, so
so the reference librarians are going to do one-on-one training of people in this, or will it all be
no,
self-explanatory?
I think it'll be self-sufficient, but I mean, obviously, the reference librarians at Lyington and all of our libraries are top notch. They'd be more willing to show someone how. My distinct hope is that it'll be so easy within about 20 or 30 seconds with a patron. They'll learn everything they need to know about this. So
Okay.
that's coming in the fall. One thing that I am looking at for myself and helping with programs and things is there seems to be a real need for the use of a text messaging notification system. I'm
Hmm.
not sure exactly what that's going to look like for us, but that's something I'm interested in pursuing for the library system. basically the ability to send text message reminders for library programs that patrons have registered for. Unfortunately, our library event management system does not do that at present. It's something the company is looking for. It's hopefully under development, but not anywhere close to fruition. So this is something I'm looking at, trying to find ways to help to enable library staff to remind people they've registered for an event, or
Will,
that. So
will reserve books also eventually be on
no,
text?
because
No?
that's a separate system
Ah,
that's run completely through the system what we use to check out books. So that's separate right now. I don't believe there's a way to tie those two together. There is a separate module with our library management system for book circulation that could, I believe, send text messages. But we do not have that installed or in use at any of ours. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing. Is there a way to do it? And if so, how? And kind of the last thing I'll mention that I'm looking at is we recently purchased something called the Meeting Owl, OWL, like woohoo, an owl.
okay.
And so this is something that was designed for hybrid or online meetings. So we do have it in our we have it in the director's office, and basically you plug it into a computer, and it's really good for something like a book group where you might be sitting around a table and there'd be someone who otherwise would not be able to come into the library, would not feel comfortable coming into the library for a program, that would then be able to join on, like, and they'd feel like they're in the room because the camera provides a 360-degree view of the room
Wow.
and focuses on the person speaking. It's got a multi-directional microphone. It's quite nice. It's nifty, and it does hoot when you turn it on.
Well, that sounds terrific. Is there a way that the person who is not in the room can participate in addition to seeing? Can they also participate verbally in asking a question?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So basically, you would still be using Zoom as the platform, but
Mhm.
for everyone in the room, you'd be huddled around this microphone 360 degrees. And we even purchased an expansion mic so that if someone is a quiet talker at the end of a table, uh, there's 16 feet of stuff, of cable that they could use. So
So they're a quiet talker, but the microphone will somehow make their voice louder?
it's an expansion microphone, so it'll pick up sound. So you'd have this owl in the middle of the table, the expansion mic at one end, and the computer at the other end.
Wow.
So we have not used it yet. We're just trying to figure out how to use it, but that's something we're looking forward to using for those kinds of things. But it's only certain programs it would be useful for.
Well, I have to say that I love Zoom. I think Zoom is an enormous, what can I say, a step forward in progress so that people who are homebound, I just had a meeting last night of my book club and somebody in the group is ill and said, I can't be at book club, but somebody brought a computer and there she was participating and able to hear and see everything and even able to make comments. So I think that Zoom has been just a lifesaver for a lot of people in a lot of situations.
Absolutely.
Okay, that sounds great. I like that. Can I roll the clock back for a moment? And you were using Ludington as an example of this new way of using the computers, but that will be true of the reference librarians at all the libraries?
That's correct. Yes. So
Okay.
this is being rolled out system wide. It's actually being rolled out across our entire consortium.
Ah,
All of the McLink libraries. I just picked Ludington as an example because it was the first one that popped into my head. And I know that they still have a separate computer that just handles reservations. There's also one at Ballackinwood and at Ardmore that will benefit from this as well. But all of the other libraries, they for computer reservations, they handle them one-on-one with a staff member at a service desk.
Uh,
They don't have a separate computer set aside for this.
When
So,
I'm on the lower level at Ludington and I look at the computers, now everything is set up along the windows so that people can use it. I'm always very impressed because the people who planned that renovation of Ludington and planned the incorporation of more computers, it means that people on computers have light. They're not locked in a closet. It's not a dark corridor. And it's really a pleasure to work there. And I see that people really seem to be enjoying that opportunity.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I will find some other things to get my fingers into as the year goes on, but that's where I'm starting. So,
Okay, so it sounds great. I really am looking forward to it. I may not be the one to use the business computers, but I certainly use the system in so many other ways, as I know so many of our other viewers do. Thank you,
Yes.
Ed, for everything you do. Much appreciated. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Library Show. Welcome back to the Library Show. It's the beginning of the year, or hearkening back to when I was a school teacher, September always seems like the beginning of the year. And we are having a new person to the Ardmore Library with us today. Elliott Brown is not new to the system because he had been at Penn Win, but he's new at Ardmore, and I get to see him quite often because I too am at Ardmore very often. Elliott, welcome. Good to see you.
Hey, Lenore, thanks for having me.
Well, you know, it's ironic because it was not all that long ago that I said to you, how would you like to be on TV? And here you are on TV. I did. We were chatting one day and I said, Elliott, you're new. I do a thematic thing where people who are new to the system, new to libraries, come on sporadically during the year, and I introduce them to you, our audience, and you get to see them when you go to the library. Elliott has a special thing up his sleeve. And his special thing has to do with working with teenagers. And I don't know if it's a soft G or a hard G, Elliott. So I'm going to let you say the MANGA word and tell what you do with it, please.
So it's manga. So here at Ardmore Library, we have a manga kind of club. So it's a reading book club. It's a book discussion, right? We meet once a week, and we have a whole bunch of kids come in. I have some material like this right here, Demon Slayer, or some other things we request from other libraries, and we just read. We talk about what we like about it. More importantly, we try to kind of compare manga as a Japanese kind of cultural kind of thing in comparison to American culture. And we try and see what the differences are, what the cultural differences are, and just kind of have a good time, talk about it.
What I know about manga is this Japanese anime. Is it anime or anime?
So it's anime. So there's manga, which is actually the Japanese word for comic, right? And then there's anime, which is the Japanese word for animation. So if you're out in Japan, you know, manga and anime just mean comics and animation. But out here in the States or other parts of the world, manga specifically refers to Japanese-made comics, and anime refers to Japanese-made animation.
Okay, so actually manga would be comparable to graphic novels, let's say, or graphic.
For
We don't
the
say graphic
most part.
novels, we just say graphic novels.
Yeah, so it depends on how you slice it, because that's actually something that I've been trying to, not I've been trying to, but there's been a big kind of overall social change in how Americans view manga, because for the longest time, it hasn't really been viewed as a legitimate kind of, you know, reading material, right? So graphic novels just recently have been considered, you know, legitimate reading material for, you know, students, children, and even in some cases, adults. So for example, say here in the States, you know, someone says, oh, you know, I read, you know, what, I don't know, 4 volumes of manga or whichever, right? It's like, oh, you're not really reading, you're reading a comic book. But as opposed to, say, Japan or especially even Mexico, right? It's considered legitimate reading material, where it's even a part of a curriculum in sometimes, some cases.
So schools have adopted, so in other places, not necessarily in the US, schools have adopted manga as a teaching tool, as a reading tool, as something to get kids who are not necessarily readers of regular books into the idea of reading. Is that it?
That's absolutely correct. So manga and graphic novels as a whole are a really good way to kind of cut that gap between those who, do read and those who don't read. In my opinion, there's no people, there aren't people who don't read or people who don't enjoy reading. They haven't found the material for them. And manga, graphic novels is a really easy way to get them into that structure. I'm not going to say teachers here don't use manga as that kind of tool, but there's a lot less of it in the States as opposed to other countries.
Okay, so I know that if I'm buying books for my grandkids, one of the things I do is I look on the back cover and see what is the grade level of this book, what the kid is reading at and what's the grade level. Are there grade levels with manga, or do they all tend to fall within a narrower range?
So that's a good question. No, actually, from what I've seen, so there are a couple of big manga publishers. Biggest one is Viz, as in VIZ Media. They produce anime and they also produce manga. They really only have a content maturity level. They don't really have an actual reading level listed, unless if it's explicitly educational. So for something like Attack on Titan here, right, it has the actual reading level of, say, anyone in, say, the 5th or 6th grade and above, right? But the maturity level is actually around 16 and up.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I sincerely mean that. I remember when my older grandchild was starting to read Nancy Drew, and the Nancy Drew books of today are at a relatively a lower reading level, but the situations that Nancy Drew encountered were not like the situations that Nancy Drew of my time encountered. There were all kinds of social issues, there was pregnancy, there were all kinds of more mature things. So that it's interesting that the manga has the more mature things. What I would think, I was listening to you and I thought, well, it sounds like a movie grading system. Like with movies, we expect X or R and so on. And so the manga is judged in that kind of thing, based on language, based on situations. Or is that fine?
Well, no, that's pretty accurate. But there's also a big, and I hate to just keep using the word, but a pop culture difference between just Japan and America, because content that children consume out there is generally considered a lot more mature than what we in the States consume. For example, one of the most popular manga of all time, it's called Dragon Ball. Right. It's very simple, very simplistic, but, in the actual manga and anime, there's actually some nudity and there's some, overall, like there's action, there's dismemberment sometimes, right? You would have, say, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, consuming the content, whether it be animated because they made an anime of it, or reading the physical issues, right? But here in the States, that was marketed as 13 plus, so only up material, because, as imagining for your child, if there's nudity of any sort, or if there's, say, someone losing an arm, that's going to be 13 up material. So it's just a really big cultural difference between, how they see content in terms of what age is appropriate for it.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the question. Are there many manga books on the shelves of the Lower Merion libraries?
Yes. So at our smaller locations, like, say, Ardmore Gladwin, Belmont, and Penguin, there isn't much. As much as I would like to expand our manga collection here at Ardmore, we simply don't have the space. But Ludington and Bala, especially Ludington, they have a huge collection of manga. They're actually one of the reasons why I kind of got my start into reading it. They have an entire graphic novel section, or I don't remember if it's a graphic novel section or if it's a young adult section, but they have a lot. It's really good.
Okay, so now I'm going to use the 6-letter word that I think is important, unfortunately, to libraries and places other than Pennsylvania, and that is censor. Do manga books, given the dismemberment and the violence that you just referred to, are they ever censored? Do they make the lists of books that some folks in some places don't want to have in libraries?
So personally, I actually haven't seen any kind of physical manga material that's ever been banned from, or not allowed in schools. Now, generally speaking, it wouldn't be banned. Let's say if it's a middle school, it wouldn't be banned. It just wouldn't be on their shelves because the maturity level is just too high. But no. Like, it's not something it's really something I haven't even heard of that at all. Just because it's. That's actually a good question. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything like that.
I'm getting the feeling, I'm listening to you, and my sense, although it could be wrong, and please tell me if I'm wrong out there, write to me, is that this has been below the level of those parents who are concerned that the kids are getting things in school and in libraries that are inappropriate. Often that's sex, often that's violence. Certainly dismemberment would come under the heading of violence. But I have a feeling that manga's below their notice so far.
You know, I can't really say exactly what the threshold is for what parents, like really what they do and don't allow in terms of what their children are reading. But I think it's kind of flown under the radar for a good. No, I can't even say that. It's a very prominent reading medium, and from my understanding, it's just that the libraries and schools, in terms of what they do have, they're aware of what would and wouldn't be okay with whoever children's parents would be reading them. Okay. Because here we have some material here that has some fantastical elements, some definitely very violent manga, but and we also happen to have some other stuff that's geared more towards manga that isn't violent. So there's two main types. There's two. So you have shonen, which is more action adventure, right? Sometimes really plot heavy. Generally, where you find your violence, your more adult, mature themes. And then there's shoujo, which is more of your slice of life drama, dramedy, comedy, romance, right? Okay. And that's generally nonviolent. So we've requested some books here at Ardmore. We made sure to get some shonen, some of your action adventure, and also some of your shoujo, your nonviolent, really comedy aspect stuff.
Do the teens who come in to talk to you about manga, do they ever say that their parents are not fans of this, or they're not thrilled that they're reading it, or the parents are generally not really paying attention to manga the way the kids are?
So there are a couple of people who are in my manga club that they're actually my age, and so they weren't able to consume the stuff when they were younger, but as they've gotten older, they definitely, of course, the restrictions came off. Now for our younger participants who are like 12, 13, they haven't spoken, they haven't mentioned any problems with their folks really consuming stuff, as long as they run it by them. They don't go for anything super outlandish, so haven't seen any issues there.
Well, it's very interesting to me because it sounds as if this is a pop culture phenomenon that starts with younger kids, and the fact that as they get older, they continue to read manga is fascinating.
Yeah. So I got my start when I was like 4 or 5 years old, thanks to a cousin of mine. I started with Dragon Ball, one of the biggest, manga and anime of all time. And now I'm pretty sure I'm going to be a lifelong reader, a lifelong consumer of manga and anime.
So now, as a former English teacher, I'm going to ask the other question. Does an interest in manga translate, as you've seen, into an interest in reading regular books?
I think it can. It really depends upon what someone's looking for. And that's actually a question I'll ask a lot of my participants in the manga club. Like, hey, what do you guys look for? Do you guys look for characters, world building, fantasy worlds, whichever? And there are some crazy worlds you can find in anime and manga. And there are just as crazy, if not even more crazy, in just different worlds you can find in, standard, book word literature.
Wow. Well, I thank you very much. This was a very extensive discussion of manga. I think for the parents out there who are watching, they got a whole education on what their kids are reading. And if there are any kids out there who are watching the library show, hooray for you. I'm thrilled. Thanks very much, Elliott. Look for Elliott at the Ardmore Library these days. And I wish you a good month and see you next time for the library show. Bye-bye.